Close your eyes and imagine sitting in candlelight, fingers barely touching a small wooden heart. The room is dead silent. Then the heart begins to glide, slow at first, then faster, spelling words no one in the room is thinking. Tonight, we're not talking about toys. We're talking about keys. Ouija boards that named themselves in seance. Dowsing rods that pull towards graves and unseen doorways. Black mirrors that let angels, or something pretending to be angels, speak. Pendulums that swing answers from the other side. These are the spiritual tools humanity has used for centuries to rip open portals between our world and theirs. Some doors open with love, others with something else. These tools don't just talk back. They let things through. Welcome back to Chasing Shadows. Tonight we're diving deep into the spiritual tools that have been opening portals since ancient times. We'll walk through their history, how our ancestors used them, and how they're still used today, and the moments when the session didn't end. We're going dark, we're going long, and we're going real. So you know what time it is. Throw on your headphones, light a candle, grab your protection. No, get your mind out of the gutter.
You're disgusting.
I'm talking about salt, sage, a prayer, whatever keeps you safe. And let's get into it. After the Civil War, America was drowning in grief. Hundreds of thousands of families had lost sons, husbands, brothers. They needed answers from the other side. In 1848, the Fox sisters heard spirit raps in their Hydesville home and the spiritualist movement exploded. People wanted faster communication than table tipping or mediums. And that's when talking boards appeared. In 1891, Elijah Bond and his sister-in-law asked the prototype board what it should be called. The planchette spelled out O-U-I-J-A, Ouija. When they asked what it meant, it answered, "Good luck." The board literally named itself. During World War I, housewife Pearl Curran placed her hands on a board and began receiving entire novels from a spirit named Patience Worth, a 17th century English woman. Curran, who had little education, dictated over 4,000 pages in perfect Elizabethan English. Scholars still can't explain it. These boards weren't toys. They were lifelines. That is, until the lifelines started pulling back. Ouija boards work because intention opens the door and the planchette becomes the voice on the other side. Yes, no, goodbye. The full alphabet. Simple, deadly effective. But some doors don't like being closed. Let me tell you about Roland Doe. 1849, Cottage City, Maryland. A 13-year-old boy grieving his spiritualist aunt, the woman who had introduced him to the Ouija, sat down to say one last goodbye. The planchette moved. Messages came. At first, it felt like love. Then the house turned against him. Scratching sounds clawed inside the walls like something with too many legs. His bed began sliding across the floor by itself, slamming into walls hard enough to wake the neighbors. At night, he spoke in a guttural voice that wasn't his own. Deep, ancient, spitting Latin he had never studied. Red scratches appeared on his chest and back while he slept, spelling words no one in the house recognized. The family called in priests. What followed were more than 30 documented exorcisms. Witnesses, including 9 Jesuits, saw the boy levitate. They felt the bed shake so violently, it threw grown men across the room. They heard laughter that made holy water steam. The final rites happened in St. Louis at Alexian Brothers Hospital. On the last night, they reported a sound like a shotgun blast as the entity left. The boy returned to normal, but the priests never forgot what had walked in through that Ouija board. That case inspired The Exorcist.
That's much too vulgar a display of power, Karis.
Hollywood changed the victim to a girl and softened the details. The real story was worse. and it started with fingers on a planchette. But Roland isn't alone. There's an entity that's been showing up on boards for decades, and it's always introduced itself the same way. It begins friendly. It knows details about your dead loved ones no stranger could ever know. You relax. You trust it. Then the planchette starts looping Z-O, Z-O, Z-O. Zozo. Darren Evans sat down one night and met it. At first, Zozo pretended to be helpful. Then it turned. It threatened to devour his young daughter's soul with an iron tongue. The next day, the little girl nearly drowned in the bathtub. Soon after, she was hospitalized with a mysterious flesh-eating infection doctors couldn't explain. Shadow figures appeared in every mirror. Darren suffered a complete mental breakdown. The entity followed him for years. Thousands of people worldwide have reported the exact same pattern. The board becomes obsessed with Zozo. It refuses to say goodbye. If you try to stop, it spells no over and over. Then the lights flicker. Something starts breathing behind you. Then the scratches begin. 3 long marks down your back while you sleep. Once Zozo knows your name, it doesn't need the board anymore. Here's a story that's been shared in paranormal circles for years. 4 close friends, all mothers, pulled out a board after wine and memories. They were laughing until the planchette spelled 4 words that stopped every heart in the room. 4 Til No More. 4 women in the circle. 4 until no more. They tried to laugh it off and say goodbye. But the board wouldn't let them. It kept sliding back. One woman went home that night. The next night, a dark silhouette stood in her doorway. Tall, faceless, just watching. She felt hands close around her throat. Her own body betrayed her. She started walking like a puppet into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and turned on her own mother while screaming and begging herself to stop. After that night, death visited each one of the 4 in different ways. One's brother overdosed. Another's father passed suddenly. 2 were in a horrific car accident that claimed their friend's life. Night terrors followed. Dark figures watching from corners. One woman still carries scars and wakes up screaming years later. They never finished the session. They never properly said goodbye. And something came home with every single one of them. These aren't isolated incidents. They're warnings written in planchette scratches across decades. The board doesn't care if you're grieving, curious, or drunk on a dare. It only cares that the line is open, and that some things on the other end are very, very hungry. Long before ghost hunters, dowsers walked the earth with forked sticks and L-rods, finding water, minerals, and doorways. The church banned dowsing in the 1600s because too many were using the rods to locate graves and speak with the dead buried there. Martin Luther called it the work of the devil, which only proves how powerful it truly was. Today, seasoned investigators still walk cemeteries with copper rods and watch them cross violently when they step over an active portal or a spirit desperate to be heard. The rods don't lie. They react to energy that the living can't see with their eyes. Some of you have felt that sudden yank in your hands, that unmistakable yes from the other side. That's not random movement. That's communication. That's a door cracking open. But Ouija boards and dowsing rods aren't the only keys our ancestors forged to crack the veil. Some tools are quieter, more intimate. They don't need a room full of people or copper in your hands. All they need is your focused gaze or your willing hand. Let's start with scrying, the ancient art of staring into the in-between until something stares back. For thousands of years, seers have used polished crystal, bowls of still water, candle flames, and especially black mirrors to pierce the ordinary world. The surface becomes a threshold. What begins as your own reflection slowly dissolves, and other faces, other realms, other beings take shape. No one understood this better than Dr. John Dee, the brilliant mathematician and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I in the late 1500s. Dee wasn't some back alley occultist. He was one of the most learned men in English.
Sure, yeah.
But he wanted more than science could offer. He wanted direct conversation with the divine. Dee worked with a scryer named Edward Kelly. Together they used a black obsidian mirror, said to be of Aztec origin, brought from the New World, along with crystal shrew stones. Kelly would gaze into the mirror for hours while Dee recorded every word. What came through were angels, or beings who presented themselves as angels. They called themselves Uriel, Madimi, and others. They appeared in vivid detail, robed figures, shifting lights, voices that echoed inside the room. Over years of sessions, these entities dictated an entire system, the Enochian language, a complex angelic tongue, complete with its own alphabet, grammar, and pronunciation. They delivered tablets of knowledge, maps of heavenly hierarchies, and warnings about the hidden structure of reality itself. Dee and Kelly documented everything meticulously. Dates, emotional states, the exact words spoken. Much of it survives today in Dee's diaries and the 5 books of mystery. Modern occultists still use Enochian calls and invocations that trace straight back to those mirror sessions. But here's what many who walk this path quietly admit. Once you open that mirror, the connection doesn't always stay one way. Practitioners across the centuries have reported that after deep scrying work, the figures don't always wait for you to call them. They appear uninvited, in peripheral vision, in ordinary mirrors at home, in dreams that feel far too real. Some say the obsidian mirror Dee used still carries a charge. Others warn that black mirrors act like a permanent doorway. Gaze too long without proper wards, and something can step through and anchor itself to you. Then there are pendulums, perhaps the simplest and most personal portal tool of all. A length of chain or string, a weighted crystal, ring, or even a key at the end. That's it. Yet this humble device has been used since ancient Egypt and imperial China to ask the unseen world direct questions. You hold it steady, clear your mind, and state your intention. Then you ask. The pendulum begins to move on its own. Wide circles for yes, back and forth for no, diagonal swings for maybe or unclear. Experienced users can map entire rooms or energy fields with it, watching it react violently over ley lines, haunted objects, or active spirits. Many of you have felt that unmistakable tug when the weight suddenly takes on a life of its own. It doesn't feel mechanical. It feels responsive, alive. Some pendulum workers report entire conversations asking about loved ones on the other side, receiving names, dates, or messages that later prove accurate in ways no subconscious guess could ever explain. Others use it in graveyards or old houses and watch the swing grow frantic when an earthbound spirit wants to be acknowledged, or when something far older notices you noticing it. And then there is automatic writing, when the pen in your hand is no longer guided only by you. Mediums have practiced this for centuries. You sit quietly with pen and paper, enter a light trance, or simply open yourself and wait. At first, your hand may twitch. Then it moves, sometimes slowly, sometimes in furious scribbles, writing words, sentences, even entire pages that you are not consciously forming. In the early 20th century, James Paget, a Washington, D.C. patent attorney, grieving his wife Helen, began receiving messages through automatic writing. What started as contact with Helen grew into volumes of teachings from higher spirits. Detailed descriptions of the spirit world, divine love, and the afterlife that filled multiple books still studied today. Geraldine Cummins, another gifted automatic writer, produced scripts so sophisticated that researchers were stunned. In her later work, Swan on a Black Sea, she channeled the afterlife memories of a prominent British suffragist through transmitted writings so vivid, it read like living testimony from beyond the grave. William T. Stead discovered he could receive letters from the deceased through his own hand. He published some of them, messages that carried unmistakable personalities of the departed. But automatic writing carries its own shadows. The hand can move faster than you think. The messages can shift tone without warning. From comforting words from a grandmother to commands, warnings, or ramblings in languages you don't know. Some writers have looked down after a session and found pages covered in symbols or inverted text they have no memory of producing. Others report that once the door is open, the writing continues on its own at odd hours. Pens moving across tables, notebooks filling while everyone's asleep. These three tools, scrying mirrors, pendulums, and automatic writing, are elegant in their simplicity. They require no elaborate ritual circle or expensive board, just you, your intention, and your willingness to listen. Our ancestors understood their power. John Dee sought angelic wisdom and received a language still whispered in magic circles today. Mediums grieving their dead found voices that eased their pain, and sometimes invited new presences into their lives. But every experienced practitioner will whisper the same thing to you. These direct lines cut both ways. When the mirror clears and a face that isn't yours looks back. When the pendulum begins answering questions you haven't even asked yet. And when the pen writes a name you never told anyone. You are no longer alone in the room. The veil thins. The conversation begins. And sometimes the other side decides it isn't ready to stop talking. People still use these tools for contact with loved ones, spirit guides, ancestral wisdom, locating lost objects or energy lines, and opening doorways for deeper work. But the experienced ones all follow the same rules passed down through generations.
There are some rules!
Never work alone. Always set strong protection first. White light, salt circle, prayer, whatever your path teaches. State your intention clearly. When you're done, say goodbye 3 times and mean it. Slide the planchette to goodbye and remove your fingers only after. If the board ever refuses to say goodbye or starts looping letters and numbers, close it immediately and cleanse the space. So in the future, if something follows you, shadows, whispers, cold spots, and even scratches, I've just told you what to do. Salt, sage, prayer. And then tell me your story, of course. These tools have been opening portals for thousands of years. The question isn't whether they work. The question is, what walked through when you last used them? Remember, these tools aren't necessarily evil. They're doors. And every door has 2 sides. If you like this episode, make sure you give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss our future content. Make sure to follow us wherever you like to social media. And until the next time, keep chasing those shadows. But whatever you do, remember to close the door behind you. Good night.